We got a YCS this weekend in Richmond, Virginia, and that means we are back on the tier maker. Let's go. And before we begin, just a quick reminder that the field centers from Chainlink TCG, serialized, numbered, each one individually, 1 out of 100, are almost sold out. $15 for the pre-order, a silver metallic field center with this beautiful illustration. If you want to support my channel, this is the best way to do that. And of course, don't forget the King of Beasts playmat. Currently sold out for zones, still available without zones on Imperium Duelist. Both of the links to those products will be at the top of the description of the video. Check it out if you want to. And I really want to reach my followers goal over on TikTok. So if you are a fan of my content and you are using TikTok, make sure to check it out. Maybe drop me a follow, help me get to our end of year goal. All the content that will be there is here on Shorts as well, but if you want to support me a little bit further, this is a good way to do that. Don't we just love the tier maker? I personally do. I find it refreshing to do these type of videos once in a while, especially now with a new format that is super wide open. I think it's actually really interesting to look at these types of breakdowns because I think it is extremely crucial when you are in an environment that has so many viable decks to be really focused on what actually works best. So in this tier list and tomorrow's tier list as well, we're going to be looking at things through the prism of the top 4.5 best decks: Rescue Ace, Unchained, Pearly, Tier Elements, and then a hint of Vanadium. Let's not forget Vanadium. There are, of course, a lot of other viable decks. This is why building for the format is really hard, but the top 5 decks should cover your matchups. And as I've said in previous videos, know what you lose to, know what your deck is usually naturally good against, and just build your deck according to that. We're going to start off with Mourner. I do want to change the unplayable to not worth it. This is what it should have been. I think I do want to get this out of the way really quickly, that there are just things that are not worth it. And why is the not worth it category that important right now? Because you need to care about a lot of matchups. You need every card to mean a lot and to be very effective. And that means you need to cut the not worth it immediately, right? So I think Mourner doesn't really have a place right now in the format. I think there are better one-for-one negations. And I think, especially, under things like Shifter and stuff like that, of course, that doesn't work. But I just don't think it provides enough versatile value against a lot of other things. I don't think there's a lot to be said. Sorry about that. Reaper also, and especially now, unless you're like playing Flandreese, sure, it's okay to side, definitely. Even if you're playing Rescue Ace to some extent, even though now just Rescue Ace players are playing 3 SP Little Knight because it's such a good card. This is worth it, but the problem is, because there's so many viable decks, you're going to have to dedicate a lot of place in the extra deck for this card to actually work. This is going to be a high not worth it, probably, just because I think that this card is very situational. You know exactly what this card is meant to do and what the effect is supposed to do. These 3 girls, unfortunately, not it. I think this Bestials in general, not just Magnamut, are important and almost mandatory in the side deck. You can look at it and say, well, Rescue Ace is like a fire archetype, Unchained, they can definitely play around it. Pearly doesn't really do anything. I think when you're going into a tournament in such a high variance format, a single Bestial can just carry a lot of momentum. They're big buddies, they have really good effects. Druid's Worm, Magnamut searches the Druid's Worm. You can now link up into SP, get more advantage off of that. And there are still a lot of matchups that you will encounter, like Branded, Dragons, Unchained is still definitely relevant. Vanadium even, they're really good against Vanadium. So I think Bestials are really strong side cards. And I think Nibiru and Droll as well. I think this package is, like, in my opinion currently, a mandatory 3/3/3 in the side deck. For a lot of reasons. Let's talk about Nibiru first. Again, lots of variance in the format, but you are talking about decks like Unchained, Tier Elements. You're talking about things like blanking out on the best deck Rescue Ace that could sometimes actually play into it. And now with different lines, starting off with the Bellstar could definitely happen. A lot of decks can play into this. This is a very good hand trap, and I've said it in previous video, you want every single hand trap in the side deck to do as much as possible. And I don't think there's any card that does more than Nibiru. Like, as a one card interaction that can wipe an entire board and end a turn if you use it properly. Same thing goes for Droll. Now, you have a lot of decks. Rescue Ace can be hurt by that. Manadium, especially tier limits, you can definitely hit that. Droll hits actually a lot of the rogue matchups that covers you from that angle. If you run into the occasional Dark Word, Fluandrees, Chimera player in a big event, this card, you don't want to be caught without it because it could mean automatically losing the game. You go against Dark World, for example, in a tournament, that could happen. If you don't have the answer and you lost the die roll, you can kiss that match goodbye, I think. These all are almost, I want to say, mandatory in the side. Definitely Nibiru and Droll. I think that they're relatively mandatory. Now, I am going to go on a limb here and say that Lancia is okay to side. Lancia is exceptionally good against some strategies. I'm going to give the example here that Rescue Ace, if they already used their emergency to search or summon something else, that means you can actually hit them with the Lancia and prevent them from going into Turbulence because they're not going to be able to banish. A lot of other decks, like Fluandrees, even Unchained to some extent, even tier limits to some extent, even dragons to some extent, you can shotgun this, prevent things like Desires, Prosperity, Banishing, Bestials. You can definitely prevent Evenly Matched with this card. I don't think it's horrible. I think it is a format where it is relatively cautiously playable. If you're running a deck that has a lot of non-engine slots, maybe you run these two in the main, you could consider this card, definitely. Probably not worth it. Shifter, I think it is a strong main card if you can run it. I'm going to put it as okay main, I think, because some decks will actually run it with some graveyard reliance, and we saw that with Pack playing Shifters in the main, just because it hurts the other decks more than it hurts them. Same thing with Vanquish Soul, for example. They can run it. It doesn't necessarily hurt their deck. It doesn't improve it, though. And they can definitely get some advantage from it because the other decks actually suffer more than that. So, I think it's an okay to main card. It's definitely one of the strongest hand traps if your deck can run it. It's not going to be good against all the matchups, though. So I think that's why. Ash, not much to say there. One of the best one-for-one attractions. Very strong in the main deck. Ogre, not worth it. Bell, okay to side if you're already stacked on a lot of other things. DD Crow, I think if you have the room, it is definitely okay to main. I think it's a strategy that moves around. DD Crow versus Veiler, I think, as the third non-engine option in terms of hand traps. I don't think this card is bad. I think this card hits a lot of good things. Hits Rescue, hits Unchained, definitely hits Burly, hits all the branded, graveyard-reliant decks. Of course, it hits tier elements. I definitely think it's an okay main. And look at all the balance, like, everything kind of finds its place. I'm going to go with Veiler Imperm. Veiler, I'm probably going to put it the lowest strong on main. Veiler Imperm, very good one-for-one interactions. Imperm being a board breaker as well. Maybe even better than Ash, I think, in this current format. You want to hit the Turbulence with force. Try to do that if your opponent is playing into it with Rescue Ace and they already have SP and Turbulence to dodge the Imperm. Just do it on summon. That way they banish it. They have to get to it again. If they activate it, they're going to just chain, banish both of them. It will still resolve. So take note of that. Gamma, like, very borderline. Okay to side, but probably not worth it. We got the Baldrake here that is always here on the list as a spare because I don't want to re-edit the list. So it's just going to stay there. I think Chaos Hunter probably again. just plays into thrust, I think, which means that Lancia is just better. This card plays into thrust. It's never been good for more than a day, to be honest, so I think that's about it. This is the list. You're gonna look at the board breaker list, and that's gonna like complete the picture a little bit. But I think this format is extremely exciting, and I think Richmond is gonna be another banger for YCS. The last YCS was just awesome, and super excited. Check out the list that we're gonna have tomorrow. So subscribe, turn on the bell, like the video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.